call.
Davis. Aaron's.
Here.
Kowaleski. Herman.
Here.
Michelson.
Here.
Miller. Rule.
Here.
Schuessler.
Here.
Muller.
Here. All right, approval of the February 8th minutes. Any additions, corrections? Entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the February 8th meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Are there any citizen statements? Tonight, we have discussed South Park Lagoon renovation design.
All right.
Great.
I will kick it off, and then we're going to take a team approach tonight. We've got a number of city staff here, as well as the two consultants that we are working with on this project. Essentially, we're at about the 60% design phase of this project. If you recall, when we did the South Park Master Plan, we had included information that eventually those ponds or those lagoons would need to be expanded somewhat to aid with not only stormwater quantity, but also quality, help reduce some of the flooding down there, but also catching some of the sediment as well. So we'll have some discussion about that this evening, show you some of the preliminary design plans where we're at as far as the lagoon configurations, and then talking about some of the different ideas that we're looking at for the shoreline stabilization. We also have included in the design is a outlook area. If you recall, when we did the master plan, we had not only outcroppings of stones that people might be able to walk out onto and fish, but we also now are looking at what we're calling essentially an outlook, where it would be an ADA accessible pier going out into one of the lagoons where we'd have availability for fishing in that area. So in your packet, you should have received a number of drawings. They'll be shown on the screen as well so that we can discuss those. We do have a number of, like I said, staff members here. We do have John Kinnear from Rutler Corporation, who is working with us on this project. And then we have James Robbie, Steve Godey from our Stormwater Engineering Streets DPW. And then we have Paul from AECom back in the corner. Paul and AECom are really the leads on this project, and Steve and James are on the stormwater and engineering side of it. So I guess if I can ask, I don't know if it's James that's going to kind of kick it off on why we're here and talking about one of the things I'm glad we're doing is James and his staff and the consultants are really working with our department and our staff. As you know, we want to make sure that we can help out the community on if there's any flooding issues in this watershed area, but we also feel we need to maintain as much of the green space in the park and those features at the park as we can. So we're really working closely to make the improvements to the park as well as the stormwater management. So take it away, James.
Yeah, Ray, thank you. I think that has been one of the key components. Engineering division kicked off an analysis of the Stringham watershed 2 years ago almost, I think. And as you recall from working on the South Park Master Plan, kind of looking at the layout of the lagoons at South Park and some of the features that could be incorporated into that was one of the big items that was brought up not only throughout the plan but also at the public meetings. I know several of the downstream neighbors expressed some concerns about trying to manage the flooding as best as we could as a part of this project. Anybody who's been in the city for a long time probably remembers when there was more water depth in those lagoons than there is now. That is a testament to the stormwater water quality aspects that those lagoons provide. They provide an area for water to slow down and sediments to settle out and accumulate on the bottom. So what a part of this lagoon restoration project really becomes is a dredging project to remove accumulated sediments that have accumulated over the past 50 to 70 years. I can't recall the last time work was done out on those lagoons in South Park. In addition to that, there's also been a significant amount of erosion taking place along the shorelines, which have created an accessibility issue. Several of the benches that you used to be able to sit on and look at the water, you can't actually get to without climbing over the back of the benches now because of the erosion. So in combination with kind of dredging out those lagoons, it's also a process of stabilizing those shorelines and making it much more usable for the park as a whole.
You can dig them deeper too, Jim?
We're still evaluating what kind of depth we're going to be able to achieve and may need to achieve out of the project. like I said, anybody who's been here for a long time knows they used to be deeper. That's, accumulating sediment over the time. We're still ironing out what kind of depth we're going to be shooting for. In some areas, we're going to be shooting for a significantly more amount of depth. As you know, those are used for fishing during the course of the summer, so we're trying to establish some deeper areas to be able to promote that fishing usage continuing. Some of the other features, as Ray mentioned, we've been working hand in hand with the Parks Department throughout this project. We're looking at doing some grading to help contain runoff along kind of the northeast corner of the park. So as the lagoons start to fill and maybe overflow the banks, trying to contain that and maybe have a controlled spot where if it should have to overflow, it's got a controlled area to overflow out to the Ohio Street right away and become more manageable downstream as well. Anything else you can think of to add on that point right now, Steve?
Not at the moment.
All right. So with that,
Any questions at all for James on the reasoning for it? Otherwise, we'll have John, if you want to come forward and start talking about where we're at.
All right, thank you, James. I'm John Kinnear with Rettler Corporation, landscape architect and project manager. We took a look at this from the aspect of the aesthetic, the shoreline treatment area, working with AECom to develop those features. We'll go through the existing master plan. This is the master plan you're all familiar with that we developed in looking at the park as a whole. Pond expansion was part of that vision back when we created this master plan to look at the condition of the ponds, to add some aesthetic features and seating areas. That was part of the goals and objectives of the master plan, and that's kind of how we took the precedent to begin our work with providing those items within the engineering project of the pond reconstruction, the lagoon reconstruction. So let's take a look at what you have now. Okay, this is just a quick topographic map of what you have now, or flows going through the park. The channelized areas here that do accelerate the water and create some of the shoreline erosion. You can see these close topo lines here around all of the existing ponds. That indicates that erosion, that steep grade. So one of the things we're going to look at is easing the banks and having safety ledge areas as part of the reconstruction project. So this really gave us some good groundwork to assess what's there. And then we'll look at the lagoon layouts in terms of where the proposed lagoons are going and what the idea is behind that. And we'll look at some of the outlook areas, the rock outcropping areas. Those are identified now on the plans, so I'll pull that plan. Okay, so you start to see this vision coming together here with the lagoons going from west to east. Sediment forebays are beginning to be designed. What that does is the incoming water, it allows it to slow down and settle, any suspended solids to settle, and then as it flows through, there's these berm, kind of berm ledge areas. That's an extension of the safety shelf, which is really just a 10-foot edge perimeter of a 1-foot drop, or 8 inch to 1 foot drop, to allow for fluctuation, not to have as much of an impact. When the water levels rise and fall quickly, that's when a lot of that erosion happens. We're beginning to show some of the water features. We have 2 as shown in the master plan. Those would be aerator fountains that'll keep water quality at a higher level. We also have another sediment forebay in the mid-pond. That's to accept water coming in from the south and allow that water to slow down and for sediment to settle out as it moves through and then on and through and out of the park. You can see the pathways. The master plan identified the addition of pathways. We do have shown, I can zoom in on this a little bit just so you can see, but the ADA overlook, I'll just pull that up quick so we can talk about that. We have a 3D mock-up of what that looks like.
I want to just point out, John, the path on the north side of lagoons that will be added as part of this.
Yeah, here, the pathway on the north side for connectivity, that's really something that isn't there. We want to get traffic in from the west and into the park network. You can see how it connects to the trails. And then they also provide connection to some of the overlook areas that we have on that north side. And it also brings traffic from the central portion of the park over to this ADA area. This northern walk is very critical to make that ADA access, to give it an accessible route from the north side of the park to that ADA ramp or overlook area. Now what that overlook area is, and I'll pull that up now so we can talk about that. So what we're showing on the overlook area, again, was on the far western side. This is a dual-purpose structure. We began to look at a couple options with AECom. There's a box culvert that needs to go here. We were looking at engineering standalone overlook areas. So Paul actually had a good thought to put those two items together. So how would that look? It actually looks pretty nice. We have, you remember the previous overlooks that we proposed. This is that element on top of the box culvert. So it's a dual purpose. There's good water flow coming out here. It's in a deeper area of water. It puts the park user out farther into the depths for good fishing. There's access points throughout this hip wall that go around that allow for ADA fishing. They're at the proper elevations for that. And then there's riprap surrounding this box culvert area to prevent erosion. So that's, and then there's also a view out to some of the pond fountain features, the pond aerator features too, so you can really get a sense of kind of the aesthetic that we're trying to create with this feature as well. These views will actually go, we line them up so you can actually look down and see most of the water and see the bridge, see a lot of the features that are really appealing in the park. So this line, when a park user is here looking out, will see beyond the fountain and start to see the bridge and some of the other elements of the park that are very attractive to South Park. So I'll go back to the layout one more time. And then
I have one question. The box culvert, is that incoming water, is that from the quarry or is that from stormwater runoff?
The short answer is yes. It would be both.
It'd be both.
Because the quarry discharge, the groundwater discharge from the quarry goes into the storm sewer system and then flows through the storm sewer system and gets to the park. So during a rain event, that groundwater flow from the quarry intermingles with the runoff coming off of the streets and flows through the same pipe system.
So it must be a pretty big, and the pipe coming in must be pretty big.
Right now there are 8, 9, 10 outfalls, I think, going into the Park Lagoon system.
Yeah, various sizes, from 12-inch to, I think, 48-inch, so we're kind of consolidating those.
Right, so the intent is to consolidate those into a couple of locations so it's easier to manage and it's less disruptive to the overall look of the lagoon system. As was described, this primary outfall into the lagoon system is being incorporated into the ADA overlook, so it becomes multi-purpose and has a much more attractive look to it.
You talked about sediments and things. Is that going to eventually have to be dredged every few years, or what's the anticipation? Upkeep cost?
It will eventually have to be dredged again every few years. No, I would doubt that it would be that often. With the introduction of some of the forebays as shown, some of the coarser sediment would get trapped there. So we may see some slightly more frequent, maybe 10-year to clean those areas out. But again, long-term, probably looking at, depending on what's going on in the watershed, 40 to 60 years for having to do a major dredging project again.
But even that being said, say 10, 15 years, is that a parks budget type situation, or would that be more under Public Works or Stormwater Utility?
From the water quality standpoint for dredging the accumulated sediments, that would most likely be done under the stormwater utility. You bring up a good point we didn't talk about before. You know, the funding mechanism behind this project is twofold: stormwater utility and general fund through the parks portion of the CAP. That's why we're trying to get the design to a point where we can have a good solid cost estimate as we're preparing for the 2017 CIP, because the initial indications are we'd like to try to construct in 2017.
James, I have another question. Do we know, is there any rough estimate of what percentage of the water that comes into the ponds is coming from the quarry versus stormwater runoff?
No, not really. We know approximately what the quarry discharges at a steady, constant rate. You know, during July and August, when we don't see a drop of rain, 100% of the water that's coming in is coming from the quarry. During, you know, June 2008, I'd say 99.999% of it was stormwater runoff. So, you know, it's really dependent on what type of rainfalls we're getting.
Okay, thanks.
I think one of the things Jim might be getting to is what happens if the quarry, and we've had this discussion, what happens years from now when the quarry is no longer there? How are we planning for that? And maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
I think, you know, that is one of the things that was, if I recall, touched upon in the master plan, and we did have some discussions initially of, you know, maybe, you know, as a city, we have to look at doing some sort of project to reintroduce groundwater flow, you know, should the quarry stop pumping, whether that be, you know, a well at this location or, you know, what that is. You know, we haven't really gone that far down the road yet. It's just, it's something we've kept in our minds, and we've tried to make sure we're at least aware of as we're continuing to move forward with the project, because we don't know. You know, the quarry, you know, for 20 years has said 5 years. So, you know, it's an operational thing on their end right now.
Sure. So with that, in its operations, there's also got the edge treatments that we want to talk about. We have a mixture of riprap edges proposed. Those areas are where larger flows of water are going to happen. So where there's more concentrated flow, we're going to have riprap areas where these bottlenecks are, so to speak. There's going to be riprap around the edges. Here as well, up at the northeast side. The other proposed treatments we have at this time are coir logs and plantings. And when I say plantings, we can look at those in detail. I'm looking at more of a, I don't want to say a monoculture, but a limited plant palette of erosion stabilizing plants that are attractive, short, some flowers, but have an aesthetic appearance to them that will create a pond edge that's aesthetically pleasing and functional in terms of erosion control, because that's really the goal of the coir logs and the plantings. The plantings need to root to hold the logs in place. And we can look at some details of what those look like. I have a detail sheet to show cross-section and plan view of what that would look like. All right, so we're also going to look at the overlook areas. We looked at the accessible overlook area in detail that had a 3D image associated with it. We just went through that and looked at the box culvert. The overlook areas, we're proposing large rock outcropping areas. Those would step down into the water and be for seating or informal seating areas. Those could have a bench behind them for seating as well, but right now the concept is to have those open. Below that would be a riprap area down into the water. That would be medium riprap, so it's not the light riprap that's pick-upable and throwable. It's a more substantial riprap. That would allow access to the water at those points. The other shore condition is the riprap areas. That's what we have shown here. That is the stone shoreline area that you're familiar with. Those are in those higher flow areas, those bottleneck areas. And then the other condition that we have is the coir log. So what that is a erosion control material in a circular fashion that's anchored to the shore. And then plantings, you can see we're showing a really low profile planting here just out into the water. The root structure and the plant structure itself is an erosion control agent, so you don't have an entirely stone edge going around. It's a much softer aesthetic appearance. But again, I don't want to evoke the thought of any kind of wild planting or shoreline restoration here. We're not proposing that. We're proposing some shore planting for erosion control, and really that root structure is going to be what holds that shoreline in place. Again, it's a very limited plant palette for aesthetic purposes, to be low, to be mainly grasses, rushes, things like that that look more green and don't have that wildflower appearance to it. We'll mix in a few flowers into that just to have some good aesthetic there. And then those would go out into the safety ledge somewhat and have an emergent characteristic to them. So,
I have a question.
yep.
So is the plantings, are they going to be kind of like a ground cover? And what would be the maximum height, and how many running feet will there be?
Right. The running feet I don't have calculated. I can, again, point to those areas that would have the plantings. I'll do that. We're looking at an 18-inch and below, 18-inch and lower profile at this point in time. That would be max height in the flowering condition, if any did flower or produce a seed head. They would be plugged. We would have them plugged at 1 foot on center to start growing roots right away. That also deters some goose problems of seeding. When the little seedlings come up, they're easily digestible for geese populations. We found 1 foot on center is a good spacing to establish that root zone. I'll go back to the plan and point generally where we're looking at some of the areas. It's over half of the pond shoreline that we're looking at in this condition. So the map shows, and why don't I zoom in here just a little bit, see if we can see some more detail. This is a good example on the far west side of where the natural plantings will be. This again is the box culvert. Water isn't going to enter the pond until the end of the box culvert slash lookout feature. That's why the riprap is shown here, where that water is going to be coming out. We have this area up to the lookout areas. We have, you can start to see these lookout areas as they're proposed. Very similar to the master plan again. And in between this structure, the lookout areas, that would be that proposed coir log with the planting anchoring, root structure anchoring. I'll zoom over to the east a little bit more to see where the riprap interaction is.
Are we going to have to apply for any kind of permits through the DNR or anything like that for this? Or you have to submit a plan to them?
The project will definitely require a construction site stormwater discharge permit. We've already had conversations with the wetland and waterway staff, and they have made the determination that there are no Chapter 30 or wetland and waterway permits that will be required for the project.
This is another good example of where the water starts to concentrate at these areas where the riprap is going to take place, and then where it stops again. And then in between all those areas we'll have the plantings. So it'll be a nice transition between those areas. We looked at the stone size, the texture of that, and then the size and texture and feel of what the planted areas will be like, I think they'd make nice transitions. And then having the planting areas with the outcroppings, we feel would be a nice transition for seed. And again, the riprap would be in front of those pond seeding areas. So it'll be a pretty smooth transition, we feel, aesthetically, between the riprap and the planted log areas.
While you're zoomed in on this area, I thought it'd be a good time to point out the bridge. As a part of the design contract, AECom looked at that bridge from a structural standpoint, and will be making recommendations for rehab to be able to maintain that bridge, similar in concept to the work that was done at Menominee Park. Yeah, so, you know, that's all a part of what we're looking at with this project, as well as being able to maintain that bridge and then do what needs to be done to make sure it remains structurally sound.
I'll zoom out again just to look at the big picture. So, yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick,
Yep.
you know, it's really hard looking at, you know, all the
Sure.
detail on it. I'm just trying to get a feel for kind of what it's going to be like. So you're saying like the natural plantings are going to be
Right.
about 50% roughly. Okay, I mean,
More,
so
yeah.
how do you access the water then? So I mean, if you're a park user, you've got some of the outcrops that you can go up by there, but I'm
there's
just
the
trying to get a
regular-
feel of a park user. You know, how do you access, you know, where do you access? And maybe somewhere down the road, we could get more of a detailed thing
Yeah.
in color or something showing
Right.
kind of where you can access the water, where you can't,
Yeah.
where everything is.
Yeah, and that's our next steps, is to provide that detail.
Okay.
Right now, we're showing you the concept as it solidifies at 60% to make sure that we're on the right track with, you know, the overlook areas, the stone outcrop areas, and the shoreline concepts. Right now, we want to make sure that that's the direction we want to continue with you. And then at that point in time, we can show you more of that detail.
That'd be fine.
To show you, the other thing too is a plant palette. We'll work with you on that to get it right. You know, instead of just using a general mix, we'd like to customize the shoreline mix with you to say, here's the plant palette, and here's what those plants look like together, and it's going to be, you know, a 3-foot buffer or more into the water, and here's the areas where we're going to access these stone outcroppings. So we'll really develop that detail with you as we move forward.
Great, thank you.
Yep, yeah, you bet. Any other questions on the layout or any of the details at this point? Okay, thank you.
At this point, we aren't looking for any action tonight on this, so if there's any questions or comments or concerns, that's the reason for the meeting agenda for tonight. Again, Paul with AECom can talk about some of the engineering issues, or James and his staff, but just making sure that everybody knows where we're headed.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Now we move on to discuss potential construction of restroom shelter in conjunction with a wastewater facility building in Mary Jewel Park.
Oh, yeah.
In your packet, you should have just a diagram of Mary Jewel Park, showing the ball diamond, Eagle Street, and then a box showing a potential site for a facility. Again, working with stormwater management and James and Steve and their staff. They can go into a little bit of detail on why there's a facility needed up in this area of the city. What they also did, thinking long-term and thinking what we can do in conjunction, is they need for a facility, instead of purchasing additional property, looking at possibly Mary Jewel, and if we do build a facility, maybe having a restroom and a shelter added to this type of facility. What we did was, we know there's a need based on the 4 or 5 nights a week that the ball diamond is utilized. We've had discussions and have applied for grants that would actually be a trail connector coming from the Waiawash, the Tribal Heritage Bridge, down behind, along the golf course, along Mary Jewel, towards Graham Avenue, so that we'd have a bike and pedestrian connection through there to Rainbow Park. So what we're looking at is a facility that might help serve the golf course. I know there's an existing portable toilet that is out there that we've talked with Steve on. Steve has talked to us in the past about building some shelter areas throughout the golf course in case a storm rolls in, that people would have some protection from a storm. So we're really looking at this as a storm or a wastewater facility, park, restroom facility, trail in the future facility, as well as utilization by the golf course. Again, it's very conceptual. I'll let James talk to why the facility is needed, and then we can talk a little bit more on process from here, I guess.
Thank you, Ray. As we, are continually looking at managing and improving our utility structures throughout the city, in the past 4 or 5 years, we've been taking a real close look at this area, kind of from Sawyer Creek north, from Highway 41 east to the Fox River, and we've discovered a lot of interesting things that occurred in the past. For example, there was one sanitary sewer crossing of Sawyer Creek that when it was constructed, it was literally supported on piles above the bottom of the creek, so the pipe was just suspended in the middle of the creek. Over time, that served to capture a lot of sediment and created a dam, if you will, in the middle of the creek, which significantly impeded the ability of the creek to flow stormwater runoff during major storm events. So as a part of the Sawyer Creek dredging project, we installed a temporary siphon to get that down and below the creek. But siphons are a maintenance concern, and they require a lot of long-term operation and maintenance to keep them flowing. There are also 1 or 2 other sanitary sewer crossings of Sawyer Creek. What we're trying to do is really combine them all into a single crossing that was actually updated as a part of the Westfield Street Bridge construction in 2011. So we do not have to do any work to actually get across Sawyer Creek. We've got a good solid connection across Sawyer Creek. So what we're looking at doing is getting that sewer extended up into this area and then relocating an existing small pump station that is located on Panoqua Street and get all those sanitary sewers to flow to a central location where we can then get it pumped into the new sanitary interceptor to be able to provide more safe and secure service for all the residents in the area. One of the things that we've discovered as we've been researching this, those creek crossings across Sawyer Creek elevationally are very close to bottom elevate or home basement floor elevations. So it contributes to the potential for wet weather basement backups. So by relocating a few things and getting the sanitary sewers reconstructed at a more appropriate depth with better capacity into a better pump station, we're going to be able to reduce or eliminate some of those basement backup challenges that we've been dealing with. So it's really a wide encompassing improvement for the wastewater system. And as Ray pointed out, by coupling it with a shelter and restroom facilities, we think we can have a project that is going to be very beneficial for both parks, the golf course, and the wastewater utility.
What kind of timeline are you looking at?
Steve, you want to join me?
It sounds like it's something that should be maybe on the faster track than the
We
slower
actually,
track?
in this year's capital improvement program is the design contract for building, for designing the pump station. We would then hope to be able to construct this in 2017. The Westfield Street project that is going in 2016, going in this year, will be bringing that deeper sewer up to the intersection of Westfield and Oshkosh Avenue, Highway 21. Then in 2017, we'd like to be able to build the pump station facility with the restroom, shelter, whatever else is included with that in 17 and get that connected. And then in 18, we're scheduled to try to follow up with Panoqua Street and get that other lift station terminated and really everything hopefully tied over at that point in time.
Would you run that pipe straight across Westfield and kind of square it, or would you go down Oshkosh Ave and Graham and then run it that way?
I suspect it will run down Oshkosh Ave to Eagle Street and It's a relatively old pipe that's under 21, getting rid of that and getting it upsized and depth will be.
I know we did some work with Woods, I think, last year on Oshkosh Ave. Work?
That was a sanitary manhole rehab program.
Oh, is that what that was? Okay.
Wood was, I believe,
2 years
east,
ago.
2 years ago?
and I believe that was quite a bit east of this area. We actually did when 21 was closed with the Highway 41 work, we ended up doing quite a bit of patching and some repairs out here back in 2012, just to take care of manholes, major renovation items at that point in time.
When, the change in the tribal trail, I know I was part of that discussion. You anticipate that kind of being brought to the bike ped for the change, and then all this being done at one time, or just get the building built and worry about the trail at a different time?
Yeah, I believe we just were recently notified, community development and planning staff were notified that we were not eligible this time around for the grant funding that we applied for within the last couple of weeks. So at this point, my intention, if we would put a restroom facility on here, is we would reach out to some of the major user groups to see what kind of fundraising we can do. Because we do not currently have it in our 5-year CIP, so it'd be looking at, maybe we work with James and his staff and his engineering, if the board agrees that, yes, we want a facility to go here, and we design it saying we can add on a restroom later, if that's something that we can look at, or a shelter, whatever needs to happen, but obviously we wanted to bring it here and get an initial feeling from this board before we move forward with any design of anything here.
I have a question. I'm on the chairman of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. From what I understand, the latest information I had is, there was a proposed, trail between the golf course and the houses that go along there. It hasn't been officially updated into our bike plan, but it's kind of a gathering of things that are waiting to the next time there is an approval. From what I recollect, it was in there as an alternate route through that area. Now, my understanding is the plan still shows along the lake, as that's no change on that in the plan. This was just an additional thing to try to keep people off of Oshkosh Avenue, make it safer and that kind of thing, because it's just really hard trying to bike through there with all the traffic and everything. That's my understanding. I don't know, Ray, if that is what you're...
Yep.
I don't think that you can have people walking alongside the golf course with golfers out there. You're opening yourself up to a hell of a lot of liability there.
Well, I guess I don't want to get into too much of the discussion of the trailer because we're talking about this building, but we are looking at fencing and other things that we might have to do if we do put a trailer in, and that'd all be part of that project. But I guess what we're focusing on tonight is this building potential. So if we come back to the trail, Vic, you're right, we need to take a look at that.
And Vic, even in our group, it was just just general stuff. There was no details at all,
right?
Basically,
right. But I do think it makes sense to move forward if it's something that the stormwater utility,
Wastewater utility.
or wastewater, okay, that's a wastewater one, would feel we need, and it would help the golf course, obviously, and potentially help. So that's 3 things being accomplished with one project, so I think it's something that would make sense in this area, and it's a very used facility.
Yeah, that restroom out there is needed because that ball field's got a lot of heavy use on it.
And it would probably be cheaper to build it then than kind of have that sit there and say, oh, we can add to it 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Well, the price tag just keeps going up every year we wait, so.
Well, and it's certainly easier to, if the funding is available to build what your kind of grand picture is, it's certainly easier and cheaper to build it all at once than it is to, okay, here's what we can build now, and in 5 years we'll come add this other piece on, and in 5 years we'll come add this other piece on. Because you're bringing new contractors in, you're remobilizing, you're trying to figure out, okay, what materials did they use that I have to be able to connect to. So it's always easier to build what you're envisioning at once. It's not always possible, and those are things we just have to try to plan for.
Did you talk, James, a little bit about our conceptual ideas, how the building would look? Is we're looking to do something similar to our restroom facilities that we're putting up?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ray, that I forgot to bring up earlier is, from a look of it, at least, from the restroom, shelter side of things, we would be looking at, from an architectural standpoint, to be kind of building upon the recent facilities that have been built within Stevens, Menominee, South Park, kind of going with that same theme that's already been getting used. Obviously, there are, certain aspects of it for housing, the mechanicals of running the pump station that, may look just a little bit different, but that's where, when you build upon the entire scheme, you incorporate that into the whole thing to make it look as unified as you can.
How big is this building going to be?
At this point, we don't have an idea. We're just, we haven't even started looking at the design of what it might need to look like.
All I'm saying is the one in Menominee Park that was supposed to be a pump station is pretty big.
It will be nothing like that. That stormwater pump station in Menominee Park has pumping capacity equivalent to the entire raw intake at wastewater treatment plant. This wastewater facility will be a small fraction of that capacity. So from a size standpoint, trying to compare it to the stormwater station at Menominee Park is not a valid comparison. It will
What
be
about
much
down
smaller.
Menominee Drive towards like Nevada? There's a small pump station, I think, down there. Would be
Size-wise, that would be much more akin, yes.
So somewhere in that neighborhood, that size, okay.
Roughly, we're evaluating, if we have to add a backup power generator, which I expect we probably will, that's not provided at that station at Nevada. So there may be some changes that way just to be able to provide emergency backup power. Should the electricity go out, we need the station to be able to run. So there'd be some, conceptual things that way that would need to be worked out.
Where Nevada's like a single pump and the other one's a multiple.
Nevada is...
What is it?
Yeah. Actually, the Nevada station, in all honesty, is a combination. One half of the wet well is wastewater, the other half of the wet well is stormwater, separated by a concrete wall. So, it is a very unique structure at that Nevada station.
I was just thinking size.
Yeah, I mean, to try to
I'm just saying, I want them Menominee
Yeah, the
Park.
one by Reach Diamond.
We were said it was going to be a pump station, all of a sudden it's a two-story office building.
Yeah.
No, to try and compare it to the stormwater lift station at Menominee Park is not a valid comparison for this facility.
Okay.
And we'd bring designs once we start, if the board decides they want to go this route, we'd start bringing designs back to get their input as well.
Yeah, certainly any architectural review, I'm not sure what level of architectural review you went through with this board, with your other facilities, but, any architectural review for any city facility's got to go through Plan Commission and Common Council, and, with it being in the park, I would expect, you would probably bring it to this board as well.
Sounds like it's needed.
I think it's, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
I think it's needed, it's on, and I think it's a good idea. It solves a lot of problems for everybody. It solves problems for the golf course, especially the baseball diamonds. It's a big deal there, because they play a lot there, and you don't have to buy more land. It's all there. We've got it, so.
Right, and I think,
it's,
the land aside, just the multifunctionality and ability to use it for so many different things is one of the reasons that really attracted us to taking a much closer look at this location.
Yeah, once the trails get in and the bike and everything else, then it's like 4 uses for one little location. I can't see much of a downside to it.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Nope, I think you're good. Thanks, guys.
You're good, thank you. Park Director's report.
I'm going to keep it brief, because I know the other staff members have a couple items. Item that we've been working on for a couple of years is the ADA kayak canoe launch that we had talked about and incorporated into Boatworks along the Riverwalk. That is scheduled to be installed this Thursday, weather dependent, but it looks like it should go in Thursday. What we're looking at, we're working with our planning division to have some type of a grand opening down at the whole Boatworks site, most likely sometime in May. So we'll definitely include this board in any invitations. If you are into kayaking, canoeing, we'll probably have a big canoe launch or something. So we'll stay in touch. If you want to bring those down, Jim, I think you might have a couple on hand.
My canoe's very old.
So that's exciting. The other item I wanted to mention is the State of the City annual address is next Monday, March 21st, at the Convention Center at 6 p.m. All city departments will have booths set up just like we typically do. So if you get down there earlier, feel free to join. I think 6 o'clock is the official start, and then Mr. Roloff gives his annual report at 6:30, I believe. So feel free to join on that. And one other point, as you know, each year there's groups or community partners that are recognized at the State of the City. One of the groups that will be recognized this year is the Inclusive Playground Committee. So all the work that they did, and they're going to have representatives there for their hard work. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Chad?
Just a few highlights as far as projects and general operations in the parks, and some for events and programs that are going on that Jenny's been working on to date. Right now, we've been able to get out and do some cleanup finally in some of the facilities. Hopefully that can continue with the weather here in the near future. Hopefully the snow stays away from here on out. Also starting to go through equipment changeovers here from winter to spring. I know athletic fields are already being asked upon if we can get those ready in short time frame, and see how weather works of next week getting in those types of facilities. Also, playground repairs are a big thing right now. In regards to getting boat launch pay stations ready, and just other facility renovation or cleanup and repairs from the winter ends. Major project-wise, the South Park restroom is still on track and doing very well. I'm actually going to be meeting there tomorrow to look at stone pallets for the facades down there. I don't know if you've been a chance to get around the facility, but things are coming together very well. Red Arrow Park, the restroom renovation bid packages are due March 30th, so hopefully we'll get rolling on that soon after that for that facility. And the sailboat dock, the on-land storage for the catamaran racks, the guys are just finishing up the completion of that resurfacing of those for this season. We did end up reducing from 15 to 10 slots on that rack right now due to past attendance, but the restoration work needed to be complete. The final project getting in before spring, when we start opening up restrooms and all those facilities, is the inclusive playground fence that we're working on getting that completed with that group. So in regards to events and programs, I know Jenny's been working diligently on many things, one being Exciting Day and Breakfast with the Bunny that will be on March 26th, with the breakfast being at 7 to 10:30 at the Senior Center, and then from the Exciting Day at the Zoo from 11 to 3 that afternoon. Also in regards to Live at Leach, I know working at trying to get bands set up already for that, plus the amusement center, and her and I combined are working together on staffing regards to the zoo education coordinator position that is funded through the Zoological Society, and all of our seasonal positions in the different areas. So a lot going on, and it's good to see spring here, and looking forward to the rest of the next couple months. So.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Okay, we've got a lot going on all of a sudden here, it seems, too. So right now in Forestry Division, we're working up the utility locates for our tree planting request. To get ahead of that, trees will be coming in probably another 3 or 4 weeks or so. So we're going to get everything set up in advance and be able to run the locates and get our locations pinned down. Working on seasonal hiring, as Chad mentioned, he is as well. Everything's coming together pretty well there. We're working on several landscape project designs that we'll implement this summer. We're looking at a project down around Chief Oshkosh this winter. You may have noticed we removed some trees. There's some money through the neighborhood association that we'll be working with to kind of develop a little bit of a planting around the statue, kind of clean up the area, make some accessible pathways to the chief, trying to allow people to visit that site a little better. So we've increased the visibility already, but want to make it more accessible for folks as they come to visit our Chief Oshkosh statue. We're also working on some smaller landscape renovations for the safety building. We've got the welcome signs that will be coming in to the city within probably about the next 8 weeks or so. So we've got some landscape work that we'll need to do around those signs following their installation. We've done quite a bit of tree removal work through the winter. We've primarily been getting rid of some cottonwoods that have been a problem for us. We took out several over near the senior center that are preliminary to the lot reconstruction that will be taking place there this summer. We're also currently working up on the North Main Street project. That's a historic neighborhood that is going to be reconstructed in combination with Wisconsin DOT, who's managing that reconstruction. There'll be we're removing some trees now. Following the reconstruction, there's going to be extensive tree planting through that neighborhood from New York to Murdoch. We're kind of in a hurry-up mode on the tree removal work there now because since it's a DOT project, they have a new specification that's been implemented in all the DOT projects to remove trees prior to April 1st because of the potential presence of the northern long-eared bat. And it's a potential roosting area. We haven't identified that the bat actually roosts in these areas because it's a protected species by the Federal Endangered Species Act. We have to abide by the DOT specifications and try to get our work done. It's mainly, evidently from what I've read, the bat can roost on trees and sometimes cavities, but it actually winters elsewhere, so we're trying to get the work done so that we aren't going to endanger any of the potential roosting habitat in that area. So it's a pretty large group of trees we're removing. There's about 19 fairly large trees that have been impacted by WPS power line trimming over the years, and they're pretty advanced state of decay. Most of them on the private portion of the area, but we also removed about a half a dozen trees that are on the public right of way too that were in need of removal anyway. So that's essentially it. We're getting cranked up for the season. It should be pretty exciting, and hopefully everything goes real smooth.
I have a question, Bill. The Chief Oshkosh, what's the timetable on that project, roughly?
I know the hope is to work on it this summer. We did put the sidewalk work into the sidewalk bid project or bid specifications. So we're hoping that it'll probably be sometime mid to late summer. Sidewalk installation. It's kind of a wet area, so accessibility is somewhat of an issue for the concrete trucks. So then, once the sidewalk is installed, we'll follow up and do the soil and seeding work adjacent to the walk, and then similar to what occurred at the George Washington statue, we'll have a internal circle that we'll do some plantings in, and then the chief burial site that's kind of roped off there, that will be an area that we don't intend to do any disturbance there, although we have had to, there was some previous archaeological work done on that site, so we're right now just getting all the appropriate permissions to work alongside that location there too. So we're hoping to kind of tie it all together in a little more organized framework. Hoping late summer, early fall.
Okay.
Completion.
I don't know if we've ever seen a site plan of that. Could someone get those to us next meeting or email us? I don't know if I've ever seen that.
It's actually in the Menominee Park Master Plan. That's what we're going off of.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Everything is in accordance with what was in that master plan. So if you refer to your master plan document, it's
Okay.
very similar. The walkways, we've kind of adjusted slightly to avoid some existing trees that we'd like to preserve.
But it's going to open it up so you can see the statue and everything.
Yeah, well,
which
we've
would be
already
nice.
removed some poor trees that
Yep.
were directly in front.
Yeah, I know that, I know.
And then, but the sidewalk layout is consistent with the plan, and then, the tie-ins to the ramps, the ADA ramps across the street at those locations, and then where the old, I guess it was a lift station there's a path there that it'll tie into as well. That was also within that plan to approach a future shelter or something that may be in that area.
That's good, because I mean, that statue, it's just kind of been hidden behind the trees, and the historic, nature of it all, that'll be really nice doing that.
It was a really easy decision to remove some of those trees because a lot of them were in tough shape anyway.
Oh, were they? Okay.
It worked out that the bad ones were right in front, so.
We can, because I think some of you might not have been on here when Menominee Parks master plan was approved, but we can email that out.
Yeah, just, I haven't seen it for a long time, and I've had a big interest in trying to do what you're doing, because I just think you have that statue there and all the history, and it's really going to be nice to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
there
can-
will also be a historical plaque there eventually as well, so similar to some of the other
Okay.
plaques that we're putting in on Riverwalk and that sort of thing.
So we'll get that out to you.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Whoever wants to talk from the golf course.
I'll start it off and then I'll hand it off to Trace. Well, the golf course is not opened yet, but it is dewatered pretty much. We've got all the ponds down to levels so that the drainage system works properly. We're still waiting for ice out, in most of the ponds, but as that, with the rains coming, I'm sure that'll melt and we'll be able to get all the water down that we need to so the golf course stays dry. As soon as we can ascertain that we can get foot traffic everywhere, then we will be opening. We're hoping for later this week, but now weather forecast looks kind of ominous, so that may not happen. The greens appeared, all those that I've been on, and I've been on 15 so far physically, but they all look to be in good condition, but we still have about 30 days of good snow mold weather, whether it's snow or just cold, wet, damp. So pray for sun and wind, that this is what's going to get us open and in the long term avert any fungicides or fungus outbreaks, I should say, because snow mold can happen anytime, even without snow. Some of the things we're going to work on this year are sand and sand in the bunkers. We're going to be putting bunker sand in that we were able to purchase last year, and we'll get that in the greenside bunkers on 3 and 13, fairway and 10, and probably the bunker on 12. Hopefully, it stretches that far. So besides the normal edging and conditioning, you should see a vast improvement in those. We're looking to tighten up the clip or the cut on the fairways and the tees with brushing and some grooming, so they won't really be shorter, but they'll play shorter. So you get a little more roll and a little better conditioning on the tees. We began in the fall, but weather conditions halted our progress. We began filling in that waste bunker, or the waste bunker on the 15th fairway. So possibly with the help of the Parks Department or in-house, we will get that finished this spring. So that will play as a grass bunker, relatively short, not abnormally long grass. So to be able to hit the ball in there, find it, and get it out. We're also looking for other ways to raise funds. And Trace and I, with some encouragement from Chad and Ray, have looked into foot golf. And I'm going to hand off to Trace right now. Foot golf, it's basically 21-inch cups, a flag stick, and soccer balls.
I'll take over from there. Yeah, basically foot golf is just as it sounds. It's golf with a soccer ball. Steve said there's 21-inch holes, which is a pretty good-sized hole. Will never be on a green, and they're in the rough. and to the right side or left side, shorter the greens. The tee boxes also will not be used as the holes are much shorter than regular golf. So that's the first concern I heard from a lot of traditional golfers are the size of the holes and have another hole in the green, but they will not be in the green. So there will be a cover over the hole during the times that are not being used and a flag stick, so you'll see it, so you shouldn't step in it and no one will get hurt. We're only going to be doing this during select times. Be Fridays after 3 o'clock and Saturdays after 2:30 on the front 9 only. It's going to be a 9-hole course. What we're looking for, obviously, is play, but what we're looking for is a lot of families. I mean, you look around this city, almost every kid plays soccer. They're not playing golf, unfortunately, yet. By doing this, hopefully, they'll get out there and play foot golf, but they'll also be exposed to the golf course, and in the long run, maybe start thinking golf looks kind of fun, too, and we can maybe get some more golfers out of these kids. I also think it'll be a very big draw for the college and high school age kids, particularly the college. I think we'll see a lot of them come over and take advantage of this. One other concern we've heard was, these foot golfers, some of them might not have ever played golf. They don't understand what they can do and what they can't do in a golf course. So that'll be up to myself and my staff to talk to them before they go out on the golf course to let them know, you don't sit there and holler and scream when you're on the golf course. You don't run around and do those things. I mean, you're kicking a soccer ball, but you're not playing soccer. So we'll be definitely educating them. And the other thing is that we'll all watch for too, is to make sure no one's wearing soccer shoes. I mean, you have to wear either turf shoes or tennis shoes on the golf course. Really, this should do much less damage to the golf course than actual golf, because you're not going to be taking divots out there, and you won't be on the greens or the tees. Did take a look around who's doing this. There's not a lot in this general area. Rolling Meadows is doing it in Fond du Lac, and a number of courses in Milwaukee County are doing it. I called down there and talked to them. They're doing courses that are doing it down there are doing about 2,000 rounds a year, and Oshkosh County is also doing it. They're doing about 800 rounds. I'm projecting that we'll do about 750 rounds this year. Again, that's an estimate, but I think that's very reasonable when I look at how many rounds we got to do per day when we have it open for play. One thing I'm very encouraged, I've talked to Erin Copperell, the women's coach at UBO, and she's very excited about it. She's actually already talked about doing a foot golf outing, similar to a golf outing on a Saturday afternoon at some point as a fundraiser. And in talking to her, she's pretty confident, we can maybe get some other groups too that would want to raise some money and utilize it. So I really think this is going to be a great opportunity to not only let more people come out and utilize the golf course. If they're not traditional golfers, they can come out and use it in this way. But also be another way for us to increase the revenue at the golf courses. We're always trying to find ways to make a few more dollars, and there wasn't a real big investment needed to get this started. I think we're looking at about $1,500 all in, and once we get everything in, we're not really going to have to do more in the future, because we'll have the cups. We got 10 soccer balls coming in for rentals. We'll rent soccer balls to people that need them, just like we do golf clubs. So overall, people I've talked to are very excited. I've mentioned it to a few people in the community that I know their families are involved with soccer, and they're very excited to come out and utilize the golf course in this way. So any questions on the foot golf at all?
How much are you going to charge for this? For 9, it's 9 holes?
9 holes. It varies, obviously. For 9 holes for an adult, $8.50. College students, $6. Juniors, $5. And then a junior, if they're with an adult, would only be $2. Really trying to encourage families to come out and play.
Okay, now I'll go over this again. What days are you going to be?
Fridays after 3 o'clock and Saturdays after 2:30 for right now. Maybe that'll grow in the future, but for right now, these are kind of our times that aren't real, they're not as busy as other times. I would call them non-peak times, because
And this will be on the front 9?
Front 9. It is possible to have golfers and foot golfers out at the same time. The reason you would want to do this when it's really busy, foot golf plays much quicker than traditional golf. Usually traditional golf for 9 holes takes you about 2 hours. Foot golf takes you about an hour to an hour and a half, because you can play much quicker. The holes aren't nearly as long. Generally, you're not going to kick your soccer ball 2 fairways over like some golfers do. The other things, Bray mentioned earlier, asked me, and definitely if people want to take carts, we'll rent carts too. I mean, I don't envision a lot of cart usage for this, but one thing Steve and I had talked about is you might get some grandparents that come out, or maybe parents that, just can't walk 9 holes for some reason, for whatever reason. And, we can rent carts as well with this. Other courses do that as well.
I think it's a good idea as far as promoting some more revenue for the golf course, but just can't wrap it around my head, I'll tell you.
Well, it's not going to be for everybody. I really think.
No, all I'm saying is, so if they're playing, you're not going to be playing golf. The front isn't going to be open after 3 o'clock and after 2:30, but the back 9 you can still have golfers.
Well, yes, the back 9 will be open, and technically the front 9 you can have golfers. They can go out there and play, and they can mix in. It wouldn't be like it'd be a packed golf course with golfers. That's the thing. I wouldn't do this I wouldn't do this on a Saturday morning when we got golfers everywhere. But on a Saturday afternoon, late afternoon, when we've only got a twosome here and there coming out, when it slows up, they could play as well. I mean, you're just going to be, you could have people playing foot golf, you could have golfers behind them, just like you would have regular golfers behind other golfers. They're still going to play the holes in order.
Okay. Like I said, I just can't wrap my head around this one, but,
Well, it sounds like you don't have a big investment, and it sounds like really you can try this out. So you don't have a lot of money invested, and I guess you learn as you go, right?
and that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say too. I kind of want to see it before I.
How do you limit the number of people in the group? I mean,
Foursomes.
Foursome is a max? With a
Yeah, it'll be foursomes. It'll be just like regular golf in that regard. Yep.
I mean, you could almost. I was going to say you could have more because. So what if you get hit with a soccer ball side of the head?
I'm sure you're going to get a lot of flack from a lot of people.
Talking to all the other golf courses, very few people have complained. If you look at the times we're doing this, I wouldn't say these are the times of our traditional hardcore golfers.
No, but
If we did it,
don't you always have a league Friday afternoon out there?
was that
Public Service League or something?
No, there's a small couples league that plays on Friday evenings, and we'll work around them. Yeah, that's a pretty small league. Yeah, it's not to say we're not going to take care of them. We are going to take care of them as well, but it's not the busiest time on the golf course.
Well, I saw it on TV the other morning, and I went, oh, boy. And then it must have been 2 hours later, somebody called me up and said, by the way, we're thinking about doing it. And I went, okay.
If we
I would think it'd be great if you had 2,000 rounds a year. I mean, talk about revenue, but like I say, you don't have a big investment in it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We aren't going to lose anything on it, and I think we can gain.
The key is promotion and Trace and his staff informing the soccer, foot golf people, about etiquette.
And that's true. I mean, if you take the amount of soccer players in this town, it's a lot more than the amount of golfers, I'll tell you that. But
I will be getting in touch with Oshkosh Youth Soccer, United Soccer. I've talked to, besides UWO Women's, I've talked to some other universities as well, and they're talking about using it as like a team fun day during their.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of potential usage for it.
And there's refreshment sales.
That's what I was just going to say. There's the concession side.
Concession.
Bring 800 more people to the golf course.
Yes. Yep. And we'll still have the beverage cart out there for them.
What are you going to pick up in the pro shop? You're going to start selling soccer balls?
No, we won't be selling soccer
FIFA
jerseys.
t-shirts?
But yeah, definitely will help concessions.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
Terry, I had 2 quick items, if you're done, Trace. Wanted to let Jim know especially, but as part of the senior center parking lot reconstruction, which is going to be starting, I believe, April 25th, the Steiger Park Path will be, that contract was awarded as well, so it affects this board in a couple ways. The path will be done, senior center parking lot will be done, but also the boat launch will be out of commission most of the summer. Again, that project's going to start April 25th. And then, just thinking, the Bowen Street Fishing Pier discussion that we had last month or 2 months ago, that item did go through the Plan Commission and Common Council. I'm sorry, not through the Plan Commission, the Parking Utility Board, I think it was, and that it did go through as proposed. There will be sidewalk on the east side of Bowen Street, just as we had seen. So the council did support that. And then as part of the overall construction going on in that area, CP is being done, Bowen, Mill Street. So that area is going to be pretty congested for the summer. I don't think they're going to be on Mill Street until midsummer, but it's still going to be difficult to get boats in and out of there. So those are two areas that if you're a boater or a fisherman, you might want to avoid this spring and summer. So that's it.
Okay, anybody else got anything? You're supposed to say, I make a motion to
Make a
adjourn.
motion, we adjourn.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.